Moving forward to our next session, it is our pleasure to introduce a distinguished global leader in the field of science-driven business and sustainable innovation.
We have with us Sri Arie Steenhoven, former Vice President of DSM Netherlands, a world-leading company specializing in health, nutrition, and materials. Over his career, he has championed cutting-edge R&D, global collaborations, and sustainability-focused initiatives that have shaped industry worldwide.
Today, he will share his valuable perspectives drawn from decades of experience in international leadership with insights on innovation management, global partnerships, and technology-led growth. Ladies and gentlemen, please join us in welcoming Sri Arie Steenhoven to deliver his talk.
Good afternoon. When Mr. Kumar asked me or proposed to me to give a talk 8 months ago here at this conference, I thought it would be interesting but would not be so relevant, but a lot changed in the world, and suddenly I think China has become very relevant for India because China dealt with the change in trade policy already for about 10 years when Trump put his first tariffs on China for a lot of products when that happened the first time. And they have 10 years experience on how to deal with that. Maybe that's also why they don't seem to come to an agreement, although it's claimed otherwise. But in China, what I hear that it may be a long time, this negotiation, and Chinese, as you know, are patient people. The green one, is it? The green. No. No. So in China, all growth is policy driven, and I noticed also on previous presentations here that also in India there is a policy on growth led by government. In China, it's quite detailed, and if you want to set up a business that's not on the list of approved businesses, you don't get approval. And if you want to set up a business that is on the low rate, there are several classes of approval, and if it's on the low rate, then you don't get any support from government. That also counts for, or even more for foreign companies. If they want to invest in China, they have to be on the high approved list. So China is very interested in foreign money as long as it's based on know-how and technology. Technology there is the main driver, and if you do research as a joint venture and have and need or apply for support from government, which is quite substantial, and a lot is available, but if you do that, that also means that the know-how becomes the owner, is owned by the joint venture, and therefore also by the Chinese partner, and not anymore owned by the foreign company. So foreign companies may decide to do research in China and not get government subsidies, or they do it in a different way. They have their research done by universities rather than by their own departments. But yeah, in the chemical field where I worked, a lot of the sales was research driven, and you need your own staff. When a customer in China asks for a sample of a product, in some fields you have 3 days to make it. That means synthesize it, compound it, and bring it to them. So the centralized planning directs development priorities, and the government sets strategic development goals for a sector, for certain sectors. the approved sectors. Based, and this is all based on deep analysis, so mostly the foreign companies that are working in China, they understand those priorities, and the planning department also makes sure their people understand why they set these priorities. And these days, they very much are directed to innovation, because after all, only innovation can give you good margins. Monopolies are punished in China, and that's a fact. If you look at some of the financial banks or institutes that wanted to start up in China, it became very difficult for them because they looked for monopolistic practices. And they reduced their reliance on foreign markets. The export to the US, for instance, about 10 years ago was about 30% of the output. The last in 2024, it was 18%, so that's a reduction of 40%, not in US dollars, but as a part of their exports. And that's certainly the aim, to be much less reliant on the US. Europe has quite high import duties for certain products, like, for instance, the EV cars. 100% EV batteries, the last was proposed 100%, so yeah, that makes it difficult. So BYD, the number one, the largest car company today in China on EV cars, started up a new factory in Hungary because they realized that just export from China is not going to work very long. And, but the batteries, they still have to import from China, and I'm afraid they will have to pay pretty high import duties on those batteries. Now, they make their own, BYD makes its own, and they're pretty good at it. I don't know whether you know, but the BYD cars, I see often in Shanghai driving BYD cars without drivers, and their electric cars go about 1,000 kilometers, 600 miles without a charge. Once you need to charge 80%, it takes about 8 minutes. And also Xiaomi, another car company that was virtually unknown 10 years ago, has a big market share in cars that are, as some people said, they're really mobile phones on wheels. They are not anymore, the main function, the main reason why they sell is their fantastic electronic capabilities. The government departments, they are very active in recruiting and supporting successful companies. 4 areas which are, of course, very popular. It's semiconductors, solar, EV, and biopharma. Sorry. So it's moving from export reliance to more sustainable practices, and sustainable, of course, is clean, non-coal. A lot of coal companies have been closed, the smaller ones, and the ones that are still left are very large companies. Made in China, and made in China means high-tech innovation. Made in China in the rest of the world is not anymore bad. It certainly, when I started in China 35 years ago, when I talked about, I was working in China, people would ask me, "You're crazy, huh? What are you doing there? What do you think you can reach?" So, I remember that Japan sold very poor products, so then I lived there and saw it was producing high quality products. And these days, you can say for China that is the same. It maybe has not totally penetrated in the rest of the world, but made in China today means good quality. The foreign companies, I was involved in setting up a large number of production companies in China, and in DSM, which was my employer, China was usually the third or fourth location of that product. And in the beginning, of course, the production was not right up to quality, but 3 years later, the quality would be the number one of all DSM locations. And why is that? I believe it's because the labor force in China, well trained, enough, not anymore today, but certainly enough people available, and also an attitude of pride. We like to be the best, we like to make the best product. The ecological concerns are integrated with economic policies. You see that the bodies that are responsible for regulating also support development, sometimes give ideas, well, try this, try that, and give support on ecological issues, environmental issues. They're not there to police, they're there to support the business, in my experience. Some examples are electronic buses, which China is the #1 user and producer. By the way, 70% of all EV vehicles are produced in China today. So this policy has been very useful for them. Trams are, I live in a place called Songjiang, which is part of Shanghai, and the trams have electronic conductive, not rails. They drive like buses. They're trams, but their batteries are fueled by conduction, and the conduction is underground. You can't see it, and it works because I've seen it working now for a number of years. The maglev trains, China had its first maglev imported from Siemens. And the first maglev connection was between Shanghai and the airport, Pudong. Now they're building a number of, it means magnetic levitation. So these are trains that can go 600, 700 kilometers an hour. So the connection between Shanghai and Beijing, it's like Bombay and Delhi, I think, but it's 1,200 kilometers, and most people go by train these days, because if you go by plane, it's a hassle, it takes time to get on the train, you have to be there an hour earlier, and then it takes an hour from the airport to get into the city, while you take the train, it also takes 2 hours, and in the meantime you can do work. There's excellent Wi-Fi connection, and you're ending up in the middle of the city. So China really focuses on high tech. So if you want to produce average quality products in China these days, it's not the right place. Robotics, they purchased a couple of German companies recently and are now the largest producer of robotics for industrial purposes. In 2024, the number of robots produced and used in China is 300,000. And I've been in one car factory, and the only people were there were servicing the robots. So when you talk about staffing, yes, we need technicians very much, and maybe more than PhDs, which I will come to later, because after all, in a car factory, you need lots of technicians, and you don't really need a lot of very large numbers of PhDs. But it is impressive because the robots are getting better, and I'm afraid that even the number of technicians now working on robots will become smaller and smaller. But because the country is investing heavily in robots, someone asked me about the population deficit. Yeah, China is having fewer and fewer people. True, it has a birth rate of 1.0, and the maintenance of keeping the same population is 2.4. So I calculated in about 1,000 years there will be no more Chinese. But at this rate, on the other hand, it's not anymore necessary in 10, 20 years, and I think it's that close. It's not so important anymore how many people we have in a factory. It's important how many robots we have in a factory. And that requires a total different outlook, and Chinese are one thing that I admire them for. They're very adaptive. You go to, and that's what I found being vice president of a chemical company. In Europe, it would take me 3 years to get a product approved by our customers, and in China it takes 3 months. They're willing to take risk, they're willing to try. Of course, they work 996, many of them, because they're motivated. They get paid for 40 hours, but they work 80. And that is still not in all companies, but foreign companies, which constitute about 50% of all the industry in China. Foreign companies are not allowed to break this rule. Of course, many do, but it is not 996, but the Chinese state companies usually work in the factories, they work 996 still today. The Taiwanese do also. My son, who works in Taiwan, was complaining to me about it, because he works 996. They support research, and very different again, I think, from India. Many Chinese companies don't do their own research. They buy ideas from universities when the product's already there, so they pay universities IP and rights, which are, I believe, I'm not sure, but I believe kept low by government. And government also supports the purchasing of IP by companies from universities. There's generally also very good contacts. They have a few, the Chinese companies have people, employ scientists to buy the know-how from their own universities. The last couple of years they go a lot further than their own universities. They also buy know-how, of course, from other universities, and they buy companies in the rest of the world. So they also have their embassies and consulates are also very active in attracting domestic and foreign capital in the strategic areas. So China is still competitive, from low-cost production to high-value innovation. I believe the low-cost production is because of the heavy automation and robotization to stay in business, because a good technician in China these days also costs maybe $1,000 a month, to just give a reference, and many companies in China give 25% bonus at the end of the year. So they also have holidays, 3 weeks a year. So the labor is not as cheap as it used to be. It's sort of middle level. And when I came to China, I employed a secretary, and I paid her 200 RMB, which is about $25 a month. And when I see her, because I still regularly meet her, she still reproaches me for having paid her that little money. But today, having a good secretary is costs about the same as in Europe. A good salesman costs more than in Europe. So they're changing. They're aimed at carbon neutrality in 2060. This is official, and in my experience, and I'm not Chinese, but in my opinion, when Chinese set these targets, they also meet them. In many countries, these targets are like, well, we'd love to reach this, but when Chinese do it, the programs will come to be able to really implement it. So they prioritize renewable energy and sustainable practices, and they are quite serious these days on environmental impacts. And if you want to build a plant anywhere in Shanghai, it's very, very difficult. But if you want to go 100 kilometers out, where there are also cities of 10 million, as you know, in India, you have the same cities that are unknown in the rest of the world, still have 10 million people. It's and have all the infrastructure and the universities that go with that. Shanghai is a city that few people know, but officially it has 28 million people. But in fact, it has about 60 million people. The other half is not registered in the system, in the government system, because it costs money, 1,200 RMB to register, which is $150. So why register if it's not necessary? So one of the new areas is towards aerospace sector, and a lot of that, I believe, is military-based, which is why the military Chinese airplanes are not so bad anymore. Of course, Chinese, like Indians, had a knowledge of enzymatic reactions. They are nature, because you make a lot of food that is based on enzymatic reactions. The Chinese eat a lot of tofu, and which is a big part of their diet, and you need to control those reactions very well. So people that understand enzymatic reactions is part of Chinese industry. Then the safety and security is example, and here maybe I say things you don't like, but I still am here to give some ideas, not to say you should do this. But 30 years ago, China was unsafe and highly corrupt. Maybe even getting a driver to drive you from one place to another ended up in giving a big tip. Today, China is totally safe. And as I just told someone, my little daughter of 4 years old, I lost her in the park a couple of months ago when we were walking there. She went her own way, she saw a school friend, what I did is I called the nearest police office. They said, hold on, send me her picture. And of course, I have a picture of her on front of my mobile phone. I sent it, and they said, yeah, we see her. She's over there, and go. And so I went there, a few hundred meters away from where I was, but it had a lot of trees, and there she was, perfectly happy. But that's, you might not all know it and like it, but in India there are also a lot of cameras, but in China they have the system. Everybody is on that system. Everybody's face is on that system, and it's immediately available to police. So that is why when you enter China, they have this facial recognition, and if you're somehow in the black books, well, don't believe you can talk your way out of it. This is the way it works. But it's therefore also very safe. No one is going to steal your bike, because if your bike is gone, you go to the police spends a little bit of time, and so you were then and there, you had your bike there, and they check it. Oh, that's that guy, this is his name, he lives there. And they pick up your bike. In Holland, if you lose your bike, they say, oh, look, we're not interested in bikes. Why do you come for us? Yeah. Okay, I have to, they're also the building robust networks, and they're also involved in they're also building 10G and 12G, which is more or less necessary for self-driving cars, and which will give that a boost. Self-driving cars already drive in the big cities, but to get complete approval also on the highways is expected sometime in 2026. There just was an accident, 3 girls were killed, and that puts it back, that kind of thing puts back the approval, but yeah, they're getting there. They're also, it's a totally cashless society. I don't know whether you know, but to get cash, so ATMs, machines to get cash, they hardly exist because no one needs cash. Everything goes by mobile phone, and if you meet, I didn't bring any business cards because people, I had forgotten that you need business cards, because in China you hold your phone to someone else's phone, and that means you have shared your information. So I don't have any cash money in China already for quite a few years, and because when you go into the bus, in the train, even if you want to give your driver a tip of 10 RMB, you hold your phone against the QR code, and he gets his tip. The integration of technology in urban infrastructure to enhance living condition, and face scanning is one of those. So people with, let's say, Alzheimer that walk around, yeah, they pick them up on the camera, and they call his family. Do you know your grandfather is over there? If you go to one hospital, all the information goes into a computer, and all other hospitals, all other state-owned hospitals have the availability to look it up. Which, of course, if you give privacy a very high rating, is not very pleasant. But if you think about the public health, it means a lot of things are done by doctors together and not by doctors in competition. Also the autonomous driving will make huge changes, already makes changes, because elderly people that cannot drive anymore, they suddenly, are capable, again, to go from one area to another. Sick people, people with handicaps are capable of moving in autonomous driving cars. Renewable energy, China has all the patents on thorium energy. I don't know if you know. They start up a nuclear reactor at the moment in Shanghai, built on thorium. Thorium is available in every country. So there is no more issue about uranium. It's a lot cheaper than uranium. The reactors are, at this stage, you can have quite small thorium reactors that are competitive in cost. Well, we only know once this commercial reactor of 100 gigawatt is going to, 100 megawatt is going to start up, but that will be next year. Sodium is replacing lithium, not totally, but for a lot of small application it's convenient because it also has a much lower explosion risk than lithium. And of course it's available everywhere where there is salt water. Electric vehicle promotion, the biggest company, as I said, is BYD, and I don't see, well, I understand there is a factory here of BYD, but in China it's also it has about 30% of the market. The government issue, the government place in China, what I believe is in China, not as in India, would be worth looking at how they do it in China. The development zones, like I visited yesterday, which was impressive. In China, they will also supply some, normally some services. They will have electricians and technicians on the spot. Yeah, I have to go. Sorry? Okay, my time is up. The government is very involved in academic and vocational institutes for supplying staff for companies. And this year, for the first time, the number of entries for vocational positions increased a lot compared to last year, although the number of students of that age actually went down, but yeah, a lot of people realize that getting a job with a PhD is much harder than getting a job as an operator in a factory. And the family, well, of course they like to have a PhD that can say I have a big job in a good company, but having no job, that's not so nice to tell everybody. So I leave it at this. Thank you.
Requesting Shri Ari to kindly remain on the stage. Thank you, Shri Ari Steven, for such an incredible talk. Due to time constraint, we won't be taking any questions from the audience. If you have any, we request you to kindly take it up with Shri Ari during the networking sessions. May I call upon C. Balagopal, Chairman KSIDC, to present Shri Ari Steenhoven with the memento.
I found it very interesting. This is what's called the Netipatam, which is hung out ceremonially on the forehead of the elephant during the celebration.